Welcome to episode 170 of the Weekly Shared Security Show. I'm your host, Tom Eston, and joining me is Scott Wright, co-host and CEO of the unicorn startup, ClickArmor.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Very
Yeah?
nice. Thanks,
Like
Tom.
unicorn?
Yeah. Maybe you're going to be prescriptive, or what do they call it? Premonition or something. I don't know. One of those.
I'm predicting
There,
the
yeah,
future
predictive.
of your startup. Yeah,
that's right.
It could be the next Clubhouse. You never know.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, I hope not. Well, I don't know. It's a double-edged sword there. Anyway.
Well, speaking of Clubhouse, I actually have, I got an invite to Clubhouse. So I'm on Clubhouse now.
How was it?
It's interesting. It's hard to describe. We talked about that on the podcast. We dedicated a whole episode to Clubhouse. It was our last monthly show. Yeah. And, it's really, think of it as like a podcast, but it's live and there's no video. And it just, people take turns. There's a moderator speaking about a certain topic. And a lot of the topics that at least I've been seeing have been around Bitcoin and startups and, kind of that whole ecosystem. But there's a lot of other topics in there too. There's a lot of cybersecurity people in there.
I should probably give it a try anyway, or get, I'm sure I can get an invitation from somebody and go in with some anonymous email address.
Yeah. I guess how they give you invites is by participating. So if you set up a room or start, using it, eventually, I guess invites show up to give out. I just don't.
How do you start a room without an invite?
Well, no. What I mean is you get you have to use the app and then you get invites. So you get an invite for somebody else, and then that's how you get in. So.
Well, maybe I'll have to give it a try sometime.
Well, if I get an invite, Scott, I'll send you an invite.
All right. Let's do that. Let's make a date.
There you go.
We'll have our own little room, our shared security clubhouse.
Yeah, I was thinking about like how could we like make that like we record the show and then have a clubhouse open at the same time.
Yeah.
Thinking of like a live thing. I don't know. Maybe that's just me like overthinking it. But
no, I'm open. I really don't understand that much about how it works yet. I've kind of been trying to ignore it and hope it goes away, but
it's not going away.
It's not going away.
Definitely not.
Oh, wow. But no, that's cool. Anyways, good to be back on the weekly show. I can never remember if it's the weekly or the monthly that we're recording. So
it all blends together, doesn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure you've got some exciting topics to talk about.
We do.
Happy to hear about them.
Yeah, we have 3 topics this week. Things that were in the news. First off was Instagram has released a new tool to prevent, maybe prevent's not the right word, but let's just say help stop abusive messaging through accounts. So I'm a big Instagram user. In fact, I gave up Facebook and then just kind of have been using Instagram for about a year now, primarily as my kind of social network of keeping in touch with people and that kind of thing. And I have definitely noticed that there are tons of spam and direct messages and, spammers add you to these groups. And it's just so annoying that you have to constantly keep blocking them. It's just a constant battle. Anyone on Instagram can probably relate. They have a huge spam problem with fake accounts. It's really out of control. So what they're doing now is that, you can still set a block on an account like you do now, but now they're going to be doing some things in the background that's going to further block those accounts. So one of the techniques that these scammers do is they use some automation to essentially create an account. It ends up getting blocked. Then they use like the same profile picture. They use kind of the similar things from the account that was blocked to go ahead and create another one. Right. So it sounds like Instagram has kind of discovered some patterns in some of these automated tools that these scammers are using, and they're looking to, block those. So the outcome of this obviously is that we may start seeing a reduction in these spammy accounts that are all over Instagram.
Is that likely to make any difference or make it harder for regular legitimate users to function on it?
Well, if you get caught up in their algorithm, sure.
Actually, that's a good point. Somebody I know reached out to me saying, help me, I got blocked. And I guess the problem was their old email address they didn't have access to anymore. So there's some message that they're supposed to send to you to unblock or something.
Yep.
So
that's the problem with these automated systems, is they're not foolproof, and they will, unintentionally grab regular users not doing anything wrong. We talked about it. YouTube is notorious for that. I know I got caught up in the algorithm, and we had our channel.
Yes, I was going to say, I know that was another person that got caught.
Yeah. So this is
it's
part of that.
It's tricky, but yeah, exactly. It's going to happen. And I guess there's also, the pain in the neck inconvenience factor for users, and they got to remember though, it's all free. So what do they get their money back?
Yeah. And I think Instagram, just like other social networks right now, are going through a little bit of a backlash with user content. So they've really taken a stance recently on terms of service violations and what they consider terms of service violations, where someone may just post something or repost something and it ends up being deleted, and there's a lot of questions of like, why was my content deleted? Because they're definitely getting
could you I don't use Instagram that much, so maybe if you could give an example for listeners, what kind of content typically could get blocked or violates the terms of service?
I think violence is a good category in terms of like what typically gets blocked, but it's also pretty broad because, for example, I've seen somebody post a meme that could look, has a violent cartoon or something like that, right? But it's not intended to be violent in terms of offending somebody, but it was more of a joke.
Right.
So,
or just offensive like content kind of things,
or a lot of like gun ownership or weapon. I know there's one account I follow that talks about like old weapons from the war, like a collector's type of account, and they were getting blocked for posting pictures of weapons. That is the content, is weapons. It wasn't meant to be threatening, but see, those types of topics can easily just unfortunately cross the line enough where it gets blocked.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, it's going to be an ongoing thing about censorship versus freedom of speech, right? So and we'll get Kevin back on to talk about that.
That's right. And speaking of that, there is another type of filter they're also adding, just to note. So there's oftentimes people receive racist or sexist or other types of abusive messages.
Right.
They're going to start essentially censoring those messages for certain words. So it sounds like there's going to be a filter that you can turn on and off within your profile if you don't want to see certain type of content that comes to you through a direct message. You'll be able to filter that information out. So
cool. Well, that's the news. Yeah, that's the way it is.
The world keeps changing.
Yeah.
That's right. So,
aren't we lucky to be living at this time?
We it is such an interesting time, isn't it, Scott? Spring and summer are upon us, and that means it's time for some much needed vacation time with friends and family. But this also means that you need to be aware of data privacy and how to protect your laptops, smartphones, and key fobs while traveling. Airports and other public areas can often be targeted by attackers looking to gain access to your devices through their wireless signals. So instead of worrying about disabling or turning off wireless functions, it's so much easier to place them in a Faraday bag when they're not being used. And if you want the best protection that you can get, you want to be using Silent Pocket's premium Faraday bag product line that blocks all wireless signals. So don't forget to get yourself a Faraday bag before you head out on your vacation. And right now, you can use discount code SHAREDSECURITY and receive 10% off your order during checkout at silentpocket.com.
Is your team starting to show signs of fatigue from traditional security awareness compliance training, or from phishing assessments that target them for those teachable moments? As we've seen in recent news, these kinds of training are having a negative impact on corporate culture, and they're really not all that effective. So there has to be a better way. ClickArmor is the first gamified learning platform that helps build a self-defending team through engaging learning challenges and exercises. Its unique lesson templates, built with proven gamification techniques, let people learn and exercise important defensive concepts in a safe and fun environment. Whether you need to quickly deploy a training solution that gets people to stop clicking on things immediately, or you've got your own boring content that needs to be put into a more interesting user experience, ClickArmor can help. So go to clickarmor.ca/shared security to learn how to build a self-defending team.
So the next story here is Apple. And this is something we had mentioned in a previous episode, I believe, talking about the new changes that they're rolling out in iOS 14.5, which is going to restrict tracking by advertisers.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a pretty big update. In fact, someone on Twitter, someone named Jason Kint, he's a privacy advocate. He had said, quote, "This is the most significant improvement in digital privacy in the history of the internet."
Whoa.
And it will kneecap Facebook. So,
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a pretty strong, bold statement there. But what it is essentially Apple's now giving essentially iPhone users a choice now. Do you want to allow Facebook and other similar apps that are running on their platform the ability to track your activity on your phone? Or you can choose to stop all that tracking altogether. And that's significant for Facebook in particular, because that's how Facebook makes money.
I guess it in my mind, it raises the question. So what are they doing right now that tracks you on an iPhone, for example? Like, is it outside of the app itself, or is it just within the, I mean, if it's within the app, it's within the app, right? So there must be something outside the app that they're getting. Is it location data? Is it visits on websites, or how is it actually?
Well, the update itself, it's actually including a new feature called App Tracking Transparency. And what that does is it basically requires apps to request permission before gathering user or device data. So what this update is doing is it changes that identifier to a unique random number to each iPhone. And that allows advertisers and developers to track user behavior, including app usage and web browsing behavior. So it's going to randomize that information.
So you're still logged into the app.
Yes.
And it can track your activity within the app, obviously. But it won't know what device you're accessing the app from. Is that the idea?
Essentially, it's randomizing that. So now an advertiser can't track that back to you.
Okay, I see. Oh, that's
right.
I mean, that's good. It's probably the most significant thing since the internet was created.
I don't know if I would go that far, but
it's always a good way to get quoted.
I find it interesting that there's a lot of talk, and this goes way back. Remember the whole delete Facebook movement?
Which one?
I know exactly. There's been several over the years. That was after Cambridge Analytica, that huge scandal. Then everyone was like, "Oh, we got to delete our Facebook accounts," because there
was also one in 2010.
Yep.
Because I remember I was actually at the time teaching a course in Germany, and I remember you and I were corresponding at that time about deleting our accounts. That was only a year after we started the podcast. So it's been happened. Yeah. But you're right. Yeah. The Cambridge Analytica one was the most recent big one that, well, even I think last year there was a big push, that was.
Yeah. Whenever Facebook screws up or, some news or hack or something comes out. I mean, there's all kinds of breaches all the time. There was the phone data breach, that just happened recently with Facebook, or data leak. Which we talked about in the last show. Yeah. So, people get, concerned about their data. And so this is another kind of in that battle between Apple and Facebook and Google, Facebook saying that this is going to impact, I think they had said that this is going to impact small businesses, or had some story around, by Apple doing this, it's going to, well, it's not going to impact them, but it's going to impact small businesses. In reality, it is going to impact Facebook's revenue.
Yeah. Well, the battle of the giants. They're going to have to keep adjusting to each other's moves, right?
That's right. So the last story. Let's talk about the thing that always seems to keep coming up since the beginning of the podcast. Going back 11 years now. Terrible passwords that people are still using. There was new research by the National Cybersecurity Center that says
that's in the UK, by the way.
That's in the UK. Yep.
Yeah.
Because they spell center wrong.
No, they don't.
Well, you're Canadian. Of course it's going to be right. Us Americans are like CENTRE. Now that's wrong. But anyway, suggests that 15% of people have used their pet's name and their password at some point as their password, while 14% have used the name of a family member. And of course, 13% use a significant date, birthday, anniversary, and then 6% have used a sports team that they support as their password.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. I was going to ask, do you still use your pet's name for your password?
Scott, I don't.
I was going to, one thing I was going to ask you is how many people from the military or in the military would use their dog tag number or their military registration number?
Oh boy. Well, in the U.S. military, at least, that's your social security number. So at least it used to be when I was in. So I would hope that they're not using that anymore. What's interesting about that, though, and I was in the military in the 90s, and this is before really cybersecurity and information security was really a thing, and a social security number was so commonplace in the military. It was that's your main ID.
Yeah.
And I remember, my wife sending me letters, and you had to put my social security number on the letter to get it delivered to me.
On the outside of it. Wow.
So how times have changed.
Yeah.
And now that's like, don't give your social out to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. But it's pretty sad how, that's just human nature that,
one word.
Yeah. But, it's human nature that people want to use an easy to remember thing. And, it's something that is probably the hardest thing to drill into people from a security awareness point of view, to use a complex password that nobody can guess.
Yeah. It's an incredibly hard problem to solve. And we've been preaching about this for years. There's newer technology that's come out. Two-factor authentication and all these great tools, password managers. There's so many of those out nowadays, but it's still probably the most difficult problem that we still have to solve in cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's the trade-off between convenience and vulnerability. How the easier we make it for people, the easier we make it for the bad guys. So
that's right.
Just something people have to keep in mind.
That's right. So I think that the recommendation, like we always say, is use a password manager. Make sure those passwords are unique for each site that you use, and enable two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
Possible.
Most businesses that I know, especially since COVID and everybody's working remotely, almost every business I know is using multi-factor authentication with a VPN. And they are, actually some of them now, I was surprised how long it took, but many businesses now offer password managers for their employees.
Yes, they do. And that's a great thing that really all employers should do. Just issue it.
Yep.
Make it part of your enterprise security strategy.
Because passwords are always going to be around. I think we talked about this one or two episodes ago. It's not that they are the best way to secure everything, but there's always going to be sort of lower sensitivity accounts that it's just not worth putting, high security, biometrics or whatever on. There's reasons why it won't always be, or ever die. So
that's right.
Cool.
All right. Well, those are our topics for this week, but and I think that's all we have time for. But Scott, I wanted to, of course, thank you for joining us for the
Thanks for
weekly
inviting
show.
me. Yeah,
great,
it's always
great
fun
to have you
Yeah.
alternate with Kevin here every other week. It's been fun.
That's great.
Yep.
Good. Yeah. So keep those stories coming. I hope you don't run out.
Oh no. And that's always the hardest part of this podcast, I think, is trying to figure out what stories to talk about, because there's so many every week that we could pick. And, to keep the podcast down to a short, 10, 15 minute podcast is challenging. So,
yeah. And I think on our monthly show, we try and do more higher level themed things that are timeless, right?
Which is coming up. So we'll have to pick a topic for that.
That's right. I have some ideas.
Excellent.
But also people are, certainly welcome to send in ideas on topics they'd like us to bat around. Absolutely.
Any feedback or topic ideas, you can send those to us. Feedback@sharedsecurity.net through email, Instagram. We are on there, of course.
Yeah.
Pretty much everywhere.
Awesome.
Twitter, all that stuff. So,
all right.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week. That's all for this week's show. Be sure to follow the Shared Security Show on Twitter and Instagram for the latest news and show updates. If you like this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button, and please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast listening app. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Show.